Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another exciting edition of Free Advice Friday. I apologize for the last minute notification on this one. I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to be able to do it. And as it turns out, I am. We're supposed to be getting some pretty crazy weather here in southern Ontario today, and I didn't know if I was going to have to go early to pick up the boo from Grandma's house or what was going on. Crazy day. Anyway, bottom line, wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be here, but I am able to be here, and so now I'm here, and so welcome, and let's answer some questions and give out some advice on Free Advice Friday. Welcome, Lisa, Alton, Sean, Bradley. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for hanging out. Excited to spend some time with you guys and answer some questions for you guys as well. As always, I enjoy doing this. I promise we will get back to getting some guests back on the show. That might have to wait now. Actually, this is a crazy month. So next week, I will not be here for Free Advice Friday because I will be traveling with my family for March break. And then I might be able to do it the week after, but then the week after that is VO Atlanta. Can you guys believe it? VO Atlanta is already just a couple of weeks away. I am so excited. This is going to be my first time doing VO Atlanta since 2019, which is crazy. So I am really, really excited to be able to get back to VO Atlanta. I'm really excited to be able to hang out with everybody. Looking forward to having the opportunity to get up on stage and talk marketing again with everyone as well. It's going to be so awesome. Looking forward to some Chick-fil-A. Not going to lie. It's one of the highlights for me. They make good chicken sandwiches. What can I tell you? So let's see. What do you guys want to talk about for Free Advice Friday? What can I help you with for Free Advice Friday? What questions do you have for Free Advice Friday? If you've got a question that you would like to ask and get answered, this is your opportunity to do it. You can feel free to type your question into the comments. Just put a capital Q beside it. That helps it to stand out for me in the chat. But judging by what is going on in the chat right now, it looks like there's going to be a few of you that are going to be at VO Atlanta as well. Lisa says, my first conference ever. Lisa, you are not going to regret it. I will tell you, it may feel a little overwhelming for you when you first get there. It may feel a little overwhelming. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of sessions. It is a crazy, crazy busy schedule. You're going to want to attend everything, and you're going to probably feel like you're always missing something. But hey, here's my best advice for those of you that are going to be attending VO Atlanta, whether it's your first time or maybe this is you're returning again. Look at the schedule ahead of time, which you can download the VO Atlanta schedule ahead of time. It's available on the website right now. Look at the schedule ahead of time and try to get a sense of, what are my learning objectives? What is it that I really want to accomplish from this conference? Because you can go, and I think at any given time, there's probably about 6 different sessions that are happening at VO Atlanta. And so with all of those sessions happening, obviously you're going to want to try to attend every single one of them, but you're not going to be able to do it. So do you have a specific learning objective? I want to go to VO Atlanta, and this time around, I really just want to focus on e-learning. Or I want to really dive into commercial, but I'd also like to explore animation. Or I'm going to VO Atlanta, and I really just want to have the opportunity to see what this coach and this producer has to say. Whatever it is, but figure out what your learning objectives are ahead of time so that you can look at the schedule ahead of time, so you can kind of make out at least a little bit of a plan ahead of time of what you're going to do. And that is something that I still do to this date, even though I am going to VO Atlanta as a speaker, and I've been going to VO Atlanta as a speaker, I think since maybe 2016. I still attend sessions, and I still learn something every time I go. And I'm always sitting down with the schedule and looking at, who do I want to learn from, or what specifically do I want to learn? And so that is something that is always on the agenda. And here's the other thing. Dad's gonna stop for a second for a fireside chat. Okay, let's get serious. Let's get serious and have a fireside chat with Dad. I know that when you're at VO Atlanta, you're going to be around a lot of your friends and a lot of your peers. And maybe you're going to be around friends and peers that you haven't seen in a few years. Like I said, I haven't been to VO Atlanta since 2019. And so while you're there with all of your friends and all of your peers, it's going to be very tempting to spend a lot of time hanging out with them in the bar or in the restaurant or in the lobby, and you're going to stay up way past your bedtime. And then after you've stayed up way past your bedtime, you're not going to want to wake up the next morning. And when you don't want to wake up the next morning, then you're going to miss out potentially on some really great learning opportunities. And so from dad to you, remember to go to bed. Remember to go to bed and get some sleep, because VO Atlanta is a pretty big investment. By the time you pay for your conference ticket and you pay for your airfare or however your travel is going to be arranged, taking the train or the bus or the car or whatever, and by the time you pay for your hotel room, you've invested a lot of money. And it would be a bummer to let all of that go to waste because you stayed up too late in the bar and you were too hungover the next day to attend any of the sessions. So dad says, remember to get some sleep. Okay, there we go. That's my advice for VO Atlanta. Thanks for coming out. It is going to be fun, though. Very much looking forward to seeing everybody and looking forward to all of the incredible learning opportunities that are going to come as a result of that. All right, let's get to some questions. Is it acceptable to use copy from an ad that is currently running on TV radio for my demo? I would be very cautious of that, only because you run the risk of copyright infringement. I think that you could use maybe a general theme, maybe a general concept, but would I copy an ad word for word? I would be very cautious of that, unless, of course, it was an ad that you voiced, that you were hired for, that you were paid to do. But even in that case, it's still best practice to always get permission. So I would say I would be cautious of doing something like that. I would be looking at trying to get some unique copy written, if at all possible. All right, where are we going next? When a client asks about our rates for a project and wants you to send them information, what is your process? Do you send them an invoice along with the contract in one email? Thank you. Okay, so when a client is asking for rates, I'm not sending any kind of invoice or anything like that. I will send a quote, and that quote may or may not be in the form of a simple email, or I do have a simple one-page proposal that I have used in the past. That one-page proposal makes it really, really easy. It just kind of outlines, okay, this is what you've asked for usage. This is what you've asked for timelines. It just kind of spells out the basics of the voiceover. It's not a complicated template. In fact, hang on a second. Let me see if I can find this template. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Okay, here. I have the template. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can do this. I've never tried to do this before, so we're gonna try to do something fun here. Just bear with me for 1 second. I'm gonna try to do a screen share if I can. Why is it not letting me change my screen? Oh, come on, let me change my screen. Unlock overlay. Okay, here we go. Screen to pages. Okay, there we go. Okay, now. Okay, so there you go. Now you should be able to see what is on my screen right now. So this is it. This is a very simple copy of a one-page document that I use. And like I said, it outlines, this is talent show provide. So it's an explainer video. It's a whatever compensation. So this is the rate that we've agreed to. I like to make sure that the terms are very clear. So I outline what my revisions policy is and all of that sort of stuff. So you could use something like this as well. Now, this is more of an agreement than it is a quote, but it is another way that another tool that you have in your toolbox for when you are providing those quotes. The biggest thing when it comes to providing quotes is making sure that you have all of the necessary information in order to be able to provide that quote. So you've got to know, what is the project? Is it e-learning? Is it corporate? Is it explainer? Is it commercial? Those things make a difference in rates. The intended usage, is it going on broadcast? Is it going to be on TV? Is it going to be on YouTube pre-roll? Is it going to be an internal corporate piece? Is it going to exist on a company's website? Is it going up on a YouTube channel? Are we creating this to share on our Facebook page and our social media channels? And then you have to have a general idea of how long they want to use it. And so you have to have all of that information before you can provide an accurate quote. And sometimes we're afraid to ask for all of that information because we think that we just have to get them a number as quickly as possible. And if we don't just get them a number as quickly as possible, then they're not going to hire us or they're going to go with somebody else. And that's not necessarily the case. In fact, by asking some of those qualifying questions, I like to say, in order to be able to provide you with the most fair and accurate quote, I need to know this, 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 and this, and then that's how I approach it. And so I think that that's the approach that you should take when you're trying to do that quoting as well. Hopefully that answers your question. It's a good question. Rates is something that we talk about an awful lot. All right, here we go. When you're finding new leads in a genre such as explainer videos, do you research by a general query in Google or do you research city by city? This is one of those things where there's actually not one right answer. Doing searches by city or even by state or by geographic region, maybe in your country or whatever, that can help reduce the results and make them feel a little bit less overwhelming, right? If you do a search for explainer video production in Google, well, here, actually, let me just type explainer video production. Let's just see. Okay, so if I do a search for explainer video production in Google, it comes up with over 7 million results. That can feel a little bit overwhelming. But if I do a search for explainer video production in Ohio, let's just say for the fun of it, that narrows it down. That narrows it down to a lot smaller pool. And so now all of a sudden, 7 million results becomes, a couple thousand results or something like that. And it becomes a little bit less intimidating and a little bit less overwhelming. I do think that there is an advantage from a marketing standpoint to starting in your local area. Now, the word local can be a broad term as well. You could, start with a little circle on the map if you live in a large city, for example, and just kind of work your way through that city. But you could expand out to your county, or you could expand out a little bit further to your state, or maybe you could expand out a little bit further to your state and the surrounding states. But there is an advantage, I think, because no matter what, the internet has removed all borders, but we still like to be able to work with local vendors as much as possible. And so if you're an Ohio-based voice actor reaching out to an Ohio-based production company, mentioning the fact that you're an Ohio-based voice actor can certainly give you an edge. So long way to answer your question, Mr. McFadden, but I do think that, yes, there is a time and place for general search queries, but I do think that there's also an opportunity to narrow that down and start with that local region. That does not mean that you have to limit yourself to that local region, but just starting with that local region. Great question, though. All right, let's see. Where are we going next? Sending out marketing emails to general email accounts and finding a name, address to them. My question is, when finding that person, who is the best contact based on job title? Okay, James, great question. First and foremost, I want to reiterate, never be afraid to send an email to a generic email address if that is the only email address that you can find. And so what I mean by that is if you can only find an info at, hello at, contact at, if you can only find a web form on their website and there's no other form of email address, don't be afraid to send the email because somebody is checking it. I promise you, if that is the only form of contact that they have on their website, somebody is absolutely checking that email. So first and foremost, don't be afraid to send. Second tip, try to find somebody to send it to. Try to personalize it as much as possible. So looking for a contact, which James mentioned, looking for that contact. So then the question is, who is the contact? That's going to depend a lot on what you're reaching out to. So if you're reaching out to e-learning companies, you may be looking for an instructional designer. If you're reaching out to an explainer video company, you may be looking for a video producer. If you are reaching out to commercial production, you may be looking for a creative director. But that's not to say that you couldn't also be looking for somebody in post-production. You could be looking for an executive producer. You could be looking for a senior producer. With some places, you might be looking for the CEO and founder because it might actually only be a company with 2 or 3 people, but they use the title CEO and founder to try and make the company sound bigger than what it actually is. I would love to tell you this is the job title, or these 5 job titles are the only job titles that you'll ever need to know. These 5 job titles are the only job titles that you ever need to search. Unfortunately, that is not the case. One of the things that we have found, I've found in doing research for marketing and continuing to always be looking for new leads to put into my pipeline is this generation that's coming up into the marketplace now. Everybody wants to have a unique job title, and so that makes things a little bit more complicated as well. Because At the end of the day, they might all be producers or executive producers, but they might give themselves a unique job title just so they can sound fancy or they can stand out, or it's a way of reflecting their creativity or whatever. And so then that makes it even more complicated for us. But here's one of my best tips. I know this is only going to be helpful to a degree, but if you can go to an employee staff page, right? If they have a staff section on their website, an about section that lists the employees, as you start reading through, there's going to be a level of common sense that comes into play where, okay, well, reception is not going to be the right person, and accounts payable is probably not going to be the right person, and I'm probably not looking for somebody in HR or whatever. And so by process of elimination, you're going to be able to narrow it down 9 out of 10 times. The other thing you can do, if that company has a LinkedIn company page, you can go to the LinkedIn company page. And while you are on the LinkedIn company page, when you get to the LinkedIn company page, you can click on that page and you will be able to get, you'll see a thing that says this many employees at work at this company. And if you click on that number of employees that work at the company, then you will be able to see a list of employees that work at that company. And so from there, you're able to kind of scroll through and look at all of the different job titles. You can click on to some different profiles. And as you click on to some of those different profiles, then you are able to determine based on what you read in the profiles, I think this person is probably the right fit, or I think this person maybe makes the most sense. So that's the other thing that you can do. And then finally, don't be afraid to put a postscript at the end of the email, a little PS. If you're not the person who is responsible for working with voice actors, would you be willing to forward this email to the person who is? And so that's the other thing that you can try. Okay, we're talking about quoting here. If I don't have specific project information, should I let them know? I would be happy to give them rates on specific projects before providing an accurate quote. So I would just always say, if you're sending out that marketing email and they say, hey, Kiri, we love your stuff and we'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. Can you give us a sense of what your rates are? That's where I would write back and say that I always quote projects on a project by project basis based on multiple factors, including length and usage and genre, in order to make sure that you are always getting the most fair and accurate quote possible. So you can ask that question, or you can make that statement. Where there may be exceptions, so let's say that I'm reaching out to a company that only does explainer videos. Like literally, they don't do anything but explainer videos. Then in that case, I would potentially be able to say, for explainer videos up to 90 seconds, my rate is X. And for up to 2 minutes, X. And for up to 3 minutes, X. When I'm reaching out to e-learning companies, and the only thing that they're doing is e-learning, I can reach out or respond back and say, my regular rate for e-learning is 25 cents a word with a minimum booking fee of $250 or whatever. And so there are certain instances, depending on who you're reaching out to, where you may be able to provide some general rates information. But typically speaking, I want to ask some qualifying questions ahead of time. And generally, the clients are going to understand that. Not always, but generally. And if it's a client who doesn't understand it and really pushes you back on it and just is demanding that you give them the number, that is potentially a red flag for me. This may not be somebody that I want to work with, because it could be one of these companies that are like, no, we just pay $50 for the voiceover and we don't care what it gets used for. It's just $50 for the voiceover. That's a company I don't want to work with, right? A company that is legitimate, that understands how the voiceover process works, that recognizes that there are different rates for different usages and whatnot, they're going to get it when you respond back with that. Lisa says, I would like to do more e-learning as I enjoy it, and I would like to send my commercial demo. Is it important to have a specific e-learning demo? Yes, it is. It is really important to have a specific e-learning demo for e-learning. E-learning and commercial are apples and oranges, right? It's Dr. Pepper and Sprite. There's no connection between those two. And so if you're marketing specifically to e-learning companies and targeting e-learning companies, but you're targeting them with a commercial demo, most of them are probably not going to give you any real consideration, because you're not providing them at that point with any proof that you can actually do what you say you can do, right? So an e-learning company is going to want to hear those e-learning reads and know that you can actually do it. Commercial demos, you could get away potentially in the explainer space. If you marketed if you only have a commercial demo and you market to video production companies who maybe do commercial, maybe do corporate, maybe they do some training videos, you might be able to market to them with just your commercial demo and get your foot in the door and maybe pick up some audition opportunities for some other types of work. But if you're direct marketing to a company that only does e-learning, I think that it's really important that you have an e-learning specific demo for that. And if you're looking to get an e-learning specific demo done, I would be looking to have a conversation with somebody like an Ann Ganguza or a J. Michael Collins, for example. Really, two people who work really well in the e-learning space. Here's an interesting one from Jerry. It says, often when you get an audition, there will be a character description like, he is our guy. When he exhales, we feel the bold outdoors. How much attention do you pay to these descriptions? It's really hard because it's all so subjective, right? What does that mean? He's our guy. Okay, what does that mean? Ask 5 different people what that means, and you're going to get 5 different answers. And so it can be really difficult to try to interpret what clients are saying with certain types of direction because of the fact that it's so subjective. It can also get really confusing because sometimes there's, 47 different descriptive words and half of them contradict the other half, which makes it even more confusing. So this is my best advice in this case would be give them one take that is as close as possible to what you believe they are asking for. So your best interpretation of what they are asking for. And then give them a second take, if you'd like, that is your take on what they're asking for. Does that make sense? All right, let's see. Where are we going? Bradley says, when quoting a price, do you usually include studio fees such as editing and post-processing in case they don't have an audio editing in-house separately or just one price? So this is a really interesting question, and I know that there are people that are not going to agree with my answer on this, but I like to give one rate. I think as soon as you start line listing a bunch of different things, I think that you run the risk of off-putting a client because it looks like you're nickel and diming them for everything. But I think it's also really important to understand the difference between a session fee and a usage fee. So the session fee, you get the session fee no matter what. If you get booked for a session and you record that session, you should be getting paid your session fee. So session fees come into play like in commercial, for example. Let's say you get hired for a commercial. The session fee is the rate that you are receiving for the recording session. The usage fee is what you are going to receive in the event that they actually use it. So if the session fee is $250 and the usage was $1,000, then if you do the session and you get the usage, your payment will be $1,250. If you record the commercial, but the client comes back and decides, we want to go in a different creative direction, we're not going to use your spot. In that case, you would not receive the usage because it didn't get used, but you would, or you should, receive the session fee, the $250 that you received for the time that you spent to record originally. So I think it's really important that we understand what some of these different things are so that we can better incorporate them into our quotes. But where there's not a session and usage division, like a session fee to record and a usage fee for the commercial, I try as much as possible to provide one number. With e-learning, it's one number, right? It's 25 cents a word. And if I get 25 cents a word, I'm happy with that rate. I'm going to deliver edited audio. It's all encompassed, right? I'm not going to nickel and dime it out. The other time that you may need to break it up, where it's okay to break it up, let's say a client comes to you and says, we're not 100% sure where this is going to go yet, but it could be broadcast and it could be pre-roll. Then in that case, you might need to put a session fee, and then you would put a line that has the rate for the usage for broadcast. So, this is going to be a 30-second TV in Dallas, Texas, and this is the rate for 30-second television in Dallas, Texas. And then you would put another line item. This would be the additional usage in the event that they do YouTube pre-roll. And so then the client can have the option of saying, okay, you know what, we decided we're not going to air it in Dallas on television. We're only going to air it on YouTube, right? And so that would be the other time. But that's more about quoting, when you're quoting, and how you might break things up a little bit differently. Jim says, what kind of mic is that? This is a Rodecaster, Rode Procaster. Yes, Rode Procaster, which is just a relatively inexpensive mic that I bought strictly for my live streaming setup. This is not what I use for voiceover. In the studio, I have a Neumann U87 and a Sennheiser 416. So that's what I use for recording voiceovers. This is my Zoom mic, and this is my my live streaming mic, just the mic that sits at my desk. All right, let's see. What are the top 3 intangible and tangible tips to A1 customer service for clients that increase the chance of long-term recurring work relationships? Never miss a deadline. Never miss a deadline. Are there instances where you may have to miss a deadline, like your father died and you need to go to the funeral? I mean, yes, there are certainly going to be instances where that may be an issue, but I would say as much as possible, never miss a deadline. Be easy to work with, right? Don't hassle your clients. If they come back and say, hey, can you fix this line? Can you adjust this thing? Can you do that? Whatever. Don't hassle them. Just be really, really easy to work with. And I think it's also really important that you're quick to respond. That doesn't always mean that you have to be quick to do the thing. So if a client comes to you for a revision, that doesn't mean you need to drop everything that you're doing necessarily and do the revision in that moment. But at the very least, acknowledging, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I've received this revision request and I should be able to get that back to you later this afternoon, right? So that they're not left hanging. I think those 3 things, which seem really easy and probably seem like common sense, or they should anyway, seem like common sense. But those are the 3 things that I have done repeatedly that continue to keep my clients coming back. All right, let's see. What else is going on? If you've got a question that you would like to ask for Free Advice Friday, the floor is open. By all means, please feel free to type it into the comments. Again, just put a Q, a capital Q beside your question. That way it stands out to me in the chat. Makes it a little bit easier for me to see as I'm scrolling through, because I know there's a lot of stuff that is going on in the chat right now, and I apologize if I'm missing questions or not being able to address everyone specifically. After asking for clarification, if a third-party person says that they are unsure of all the places or for how long the voice will be used in their project, what is the best response to that? I don't buy it. I don't. I mean, maybe if the third party has no clue, but in that case, they need to find out, right? Because at the end of the day, the client knows where they're going to use this thing, right? At the end of the day, the client knows if they're creating this for broadcast commercial, if they're creating this for YouTube pre-roll, if they're creating this for social media. At the end of the day, somebody knows. Somebody does know. And so I would say, as much as possible, you got to try to find out. And I wouldn't be afraid to let them know that without knowing what the usage is, it really is impossible to provide a fair and accurate quote. Jordan says, going to VO Atlanta for the first time this year. Are you going? Any tips for connecting and networking? Jordan, I talked about VO Atlanta right at the very top of the show, so I don't want to go too much back into that. But if you want to go back and watch the early part of the broadcast later, I dive a lot into VO Atlanta and some specific tips for VO Atlanta. I think, bring some business cards. Don't be afraid to meet some people. Don't be afraid to say hello to some people. Coaches, the mentors, the producers, the people that are there to teach. Don't be afraid to say hello to them. I would definitely not be like pouncing on agents or casting directors and shoving your business cards in their faces. It's one thing to say hi to them, to thank them for something that they taught you because you sat in on one of their sessions, to be appreciative for the information that they've shared. It's another thing to walk up to an agent and start giving them a sales pitch right out of the gate and trying to hand them a business card. I would definitely avoid stuff like that. I don't think the agents respond too well to that. I don't think the casting directors respond too well to that necessarily. Some of them may give you an invitation, right? If you attend one of their sessions, they may give an invitation to feel free to email me your demos after the conference, or, if you've got a business card, I'd be happy to accept it or whatever. In that case, okay, fine. But if they don't specifically mention it or give that invitation, I certainly would not be hounding them. So keep that in mind. But handing out business cards, meeting some other voice actors and stuff like that, I mean, that's part of the fun of VO Atlanta. That's why they call VO Atlanta the VO family reunion. So most importantly, figure out what your learning objectives are. Make sure that you attend those sessions and attend them intently. And try not to party too hard and too late so that you sleep in and you miss some stuff, which is, that was the dad speech that I gave earlier in the broadcast. All right, where are we going? Jim says, what platform and microphone do you use for your podcast? All right, Jim. When I'm recording my interviews, I am doing riverside.fm, which so far I've been pretty happy with that platform. So riverside.fm. My backup for recording interviews is cleanfeed.net, and I've recorded a lot of interviews on cleanfeed.net. And my podcasts, I record them in the studio, so either on the U87 or on the 416. When I'm recording interviews, and I'm using Riverside, those ones I do record video for. I've never used the video yet. Honestly, I just don't have time to edit video versions of my podcast. Oh, sorry, but I have hopes of being able to do that one day. So when I'm recording video versions of my podcast, I will use the 416 because I can get a little bit further away from it and kind of keep it off camera. But if I'm just recording, like my Tools series podcast that I've been recording, those have just been me in the booth and using the U87. Lisa says, Mark, what mic are you taking to use in the hotel? My 416 is my travel mic. And it's a beautiful travel mic. The 416 is so forgiving of the space that you're recording in. And so it makes it a lot easier to, if you've got to build a pillow fort, you gotta stack the ironing. So actually here's my process. Bath towel across the desk, across the surface of the desk. Ironing board on top of the desk, pillows shoved into all of the little crevices of the ironing board, and then the spare comforter and blanket over top of the ironing board. So it gives me as quiet of a space as possible and controls the bouncing of the sound as much as possible. And then I'm able to record in that space with the 416 and get pretty decent sound without having to worry too much about sound bouncing around and acoustics and all of that sort of stuff. Bill says, how do you manage foreign exchange being based in Canada when being paid in USD? So ultimately everything, well, not everything, the vast majority of my payments I ultimately do convert to Canadian dollars. So if somebody pays me, I have no problem collecting payments in USD. In fact, I invoice primarily in USD. So if you make a payment through PayPal, I will use PayPal to do the exchange rate. I prefer to use Stripe and use credit card payment for US payments, only because Stripe offers a better exchange rate than PayPal does. So if somebody goes to my website and processes a payment through Stripe, Stripe automatically converts to Canadian dollars and then sends the money to my bank account. I may keep some US funds in my PayPal just in case. I do have some clients that pay me via check, and so when I have US checks that come in, I may keep those US checks and just deposit them into a US currency account. That way I've got some US cash. So for example, when I go to VO Atlanta in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be able to go and withdraw some US cash from that account, so I don't have to pay exchange twice, right? If I'm converting all my US to Canadian, and then when I want to make a trip to the States, I've got to convert Canadian back to US, and I'm taking a hit on the exchange both times. So I do try to keep a little bit. But honestly, it's not an issue. The biggest thing I would say is when you are, excuse me, when you're doing from an accounting standpoint, just make sure that if you are converting your currency, that you're keeping note of the exchange rate. So I can go in and I can see this is what the original invoice amount was, and this is the amount that I received after exchange. Because if you don't do that, Canada Revenue Agency will just give you, they will assign whatever the default exchange rate, or at least this is how I understand it. They will assign whatever the default exchange rate is to your income for tax purposes. So I always just make sure that I keep records of what exchange rate I received for any of the funds that I am converting. And I will just mention that I am not an accountant, and so you should always consult with an accountant to make sure that this is actually good advice. But this is kind of how I handle that. Richie says, during lead outreach in the first email, are you including a link to your demos, attaching a reel, both, or neither? Some email servers have heavy filters. Yes, and that is exactly why I link. I always want to link. And there's a couple of reasons why I want to link. And Cliff Zellman does not agree with me on this. And Cliff and I have had this conversation before. We had this conversation on my podcast when I had Cliff on the podcast. Cliff prefers to receive an attachment. He thinks it's easier. There's certainly a case to be made for that. But the other case to be made is you run the risk of spam filters. Unsolicited attachments run the risk of spam filters. So I always want to include a link to my website. And here's a couple of things that go along with that. Number one, I can't put all of the information about my services into an introductory marketing email, or that email would be way too long. So by linking them to my website, they're able to find all of the other information that I did not include in that email. So they're able to find out my studio specs. They're able to find out a little bit more about my services. They're able to listen to my demos. They're able to see testimonials of clients that I've worked with. They're able to see a list of clients that I've worked with in the past, right? And so by linking them to my website, I'm giving them the opportunity to get a lot more information. By linking them to my website, I am much less likely to land in spam folders. So that's the other reason why, which we discussed. The third piece of advice that I would give you is make sure if you're going to link them to your website, give them the URL. So what I mean by that is in my email, I would say, give my demos a listen at marcscottvoiceover.com. I do not say you can listen to my demos by clicking here and then embedding the link, because if you embed the link, it's much more likely that that will trigger filters for phishing. So by putting the full URL, listen at marcscottvoiceover.com, I avoid the potential for phishing. The other reason why I like to link to my demos is because let's say that I send that introductory email and I get a response, hey, Marc, we love your stuff. We'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. Now I have a follow-up. Hey, Bob, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to work with you. Thank you so much for your consideration. I certainly appreciate it. Would you like to have any of my demos, or would you like to have copies of any of my demos on file for future reference? Bob writes back, actually, that would be fantastic. Can you send me your explainer and your corporate narration demo? Now, Bob is looking for those attachments, so he's much more likely to get them. And so that's a little bit about why I do things the way that I do. Susan says, is it okay to recommend script revisions as a voiceover? As a radio production director, I used to suggest revisions to radio clients. Not sure how that's received in the VO world. I am generally not going to provide any feedback on script revisions unless, and this happens more in eLearning than anything else, if I see something where clearly the script was written by somebody who English is a second language, for example. So they've outsourced translation or something like that. Or the script has been translated from another language. So I've had that in the past where the original project was done in Spanish or the original project was done in French, for example, and the script has been translated into English. And sometimes things get lost in translation a little bit if you just do a straight word for word translation. So if there is something that really obviously stands out, I'm just not sure that this makes sense or whatever, I will, in that case, I may send a letter back to the client and say, hey, can you just take a look at this paragraph and confirm, is this what you want it to say? Or, hey, would you mind just taking a look at this line? Like, should it say this, or maybe should it say this, or something like that? So generally that's just if there's something that seems wrong, a mistake. That's about the only time that I'm going to send script revisions, because I don't want to get into, telling a client how to write their copy. I feel like that's probably beyond my level of expertise unless specifically asked, right? And I've had that a couple times in the past where clients said, what do you think of this? Or, based on your experience, is there anything you would change? In which case, then maybe I'll offer a suggestion. Following on, one producer told me that any email with the word availability in the subject line is filtered to spam immediately. More of a tip on that question. Well, that's interesting because I just sent out an email for my March availability to 200 clients this week. I have not received notice that any of those emails have bounced back as spam. I have received responses from some of my clients thanking me for letting them know about that. So I can't speak directly to that, whether or not that is or isn't a thing, other than to say I very often send out emails with the subject line that says availability or March availability or upcoming availability or things like that. And I've never personally, at least I don't think anyway, that I've run into any issues with that one. Lisa says I need a 416. Everybody needs a 416. They're beautiful. They really are beautiful. Jordan says I've got a Rode NT2 shotgun, but no 416. Do you think that might be an okay travel mic during VOA? Jordan, I say talk to Uncle Roy, who it looks like he's already said yes, that will be fine. I think just shotgun mics in general, right? The problem with a U87 or some of these large diaphragm condensers is they're literally going to pick up everything. And so unless you are in a very, very, very controlled environment, putting up some pillows and putting a blanket over top of you, it's not going to change the fact that they're still going to pick up everything. Whereas the shotguns are only going to pick up what's in front of them. And so it makes it a lot more easier to control the space. So I think that any kind of shotgun mic probably is going to be better. But again, Uncle Roy can speak directly to that. I don't want to get into dispensing too much studio and equipment advice because I don't know. And I see that he's answering some questions in the chat there as well. So I will allow him to continue to do that because he knows way more about this stuff than I do. Kim says, I'm comfortable with Source Connect and Zoom, but not sure what to do when people want a phone patch. Do I just use earbuds? Would have to be cordless. Very seldom are you going to get asked for phone patch anymore. And here's the other thing. Sometimes people will ask for phone patch, but what they really mean is, can we do a Skype or can we do a Zoom or can we do a Source Connect or whatever, right? It's just phone patch has just become a terminology in the past. But I will tell you what I have done in the past when a client wants to direct me via the telephone. I take my phone in the studio and I just use my Apple earbuds. That's it. I plug my earbud in. So I put one earbud in so I can hear them and away we go. Now, that doesn't give me the ability to play back, but they understand that. They just want to be able to direct me. So, I mean, I've done that before with success. So I think you could certainly try to do that as well. Uncle Roy, we're going to have to do a Free Advice Friday again sometime. I'll bring you back on the show and we'll answer questions about microphones and all of these fun different things. I saw somebody commenting about the Shure SMB7. I actually thought about buying the SMB7 for the microphone here on my desk. I was looking at the Shure SMB7. Ultimately, I decided to go with the Procaster, the Rode Procaster, because I'm actually using. No, what is this one called? This is the Rode. I get all them mixed up. I'm using a Rodecaster. The Rodecaster Pro is the mixer that I'm using. And so because I was using the Rodecaster Pro mixer for my live streaming and for my office setup, I was like, wow, what the heck? I'll just get the Rode Procaster to go along with it, keep everything the same. So that was ultimately what I decided. But I've heard good things about the SMB7, although I think that some of those mics are probably better suited for podcasting over top of voiceover. Richie says, I've heard you say you're an Apple fanboy. What audio interface are you using for travel? I'm on a MacBook with USB-C. I use my Yamaha AGO3 for my travel interface, and I just use it because I have one. The AGO3 used to be an interface that I used as my main interface in the studio. It's relatively small, so it travels okay. I had to get a little adapter that does USB-C or takes USB to USB-C. Hang on a second. I think I can find it because I needed that obviously for my MacBook. Let me check my Amazon history and I can find the USB-C, the little pluggies. There they are. These are the little pluggies that I got. Hold on a second. I will paste these into the chat. Yep, these are them. They work great, so I've been able to use that. And continue to use my my AGO3. Oh, here we go. Here's the link. Sorry, taking me a minute to do this. We're live on YouTube, doing the best I can to keep up. So I ordered a couple of these, and actually, what did I just do? I pushed a button. I ordered a couple of those so that I can hook up anything, right? Because every stinking device that I have is a USB, and so then when I got the MacBook Pro that had the USB-C, I needed adapters so that I could use any of the equipment, my external hard drives, my audio interface, my Stream Deck, all of that sort of stuff. And so I've ordered some of those little adapters, and they've worked really well. So I just threw that in the chat. Steve says, when you and a client agree to collaborate and you want to hop on a quick Zoom to build rapport, what are some questions, topics you'd discuss to not waste time? I mean, if you're specifically talking about a project, I think the biggest things that I would want to be understanding, give me an outline of the project. What is the specific direction that you're looking for in the read? Do you have any specific requirements for your audio? Do you want 4416 or 4824 or MP3 or WAV or AIF or I ask some of those questions. I think I would want to make sure to get a clear understanding of what their delivery expectations are as well. How fast are you expecting this, or do you need to have this by a specific date or something like that? Those are some of the things that I would be asking. And then, give them an opportunity. Is there anything else you want me to understand or anything I should know about the project? Is there any questions that you have for me? Holy mackerel. Is it 1:47 already? Guys, time flies when you're answering questions on Free Advice Friday. Woo-wee! What can I ask, or what can you ask, and what can I answer for you? If you've got a question, I've still got a little bit of time to hang out here on Free Advice Friday. So feel free, if you've got a question that you would like to ask, you can type that question into the comments, and I'm happy to answer that question for you. Looking forward to having the opportunity to do that. Very quickly want to mention, I taught the brand new version of my Making Money with LinkedIn Masterclass this past Tuesday, fully updated for 2023. We covered a lot of ground. I mean, a lot of ground. Feedback up to this point has been overwhelmingly positive. If you are interested in that class, you did miss the live version of it, but not to worry. The video version is available now for purchase at markscottcoaching.com. So if you go to markscottcoaching.com/shop, markscottcoaching.com/shop, and you can get instant access to the Making Money with LinkedIn Masterclass and start watching that. You could watch that this weekend, and you'll be able to up your LinkedIn game by next week. So much good advice in there, and I want to make sure that you understand too, everything that I teach in that Making Money with LinkedIn Masterclass can be done with a free profile. So I give some tips, some tricks, and some hacks for workarounds for doing things with that free profile. So make sure you check that out. And also want to mention the new episode of the podcast. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, it went live yesterday. As we continue on with the tools series, this time around I'm talking about the tools that I use for graphic design. You might be surprised as a voice actor how much graphic design comes into play with what we do on a regular basis for all of the marketing collateral, the social media collateral. I mean, I create graphics for tons of stuff. And so I'm often asked about some of those different things. Where did you get your logo from? Or what do you use for creating graphics? Or how do you find your templates for your courses and all of this kind of stuff? And so I'm sharing all of the tools that I use for graphic design. So that's the new episode of the podcast, which is, of course, available at VOpreneur.com or wherever fine podcasts are given away for free. So check that out. Thank you for watching, by the way. Like and subscribe, please. By all means, flip me a like right now if you're still watching on the live stream. I'd appreciate the like, and make sure you hit a subscribe so you get notified anytime that I am going live on YouTube. I can tell you right now, I will not be available for a Free Advice Friday next week. I am going to be traveling next week, but I'll try to get one in the week after. And so that we get one in before I go to VO Atlanta. So I will let you know when that is happening. But if you subscribe to the channel, you'll be able to get notified when I go live as well. Any other questions? I've got time for a couple more questions. If you've got something that you would like to ask and get answered, by all means, anything business and marketing related, I am certainly happy to do my best to answer those questions for you. You just have to type them into the comment section. I would just ask if you could put a capital Q beside it, and that way it pops out to me. So that just differentiates the questions from just some of the regular chat that is going on. And if I missed a question, I apologize. Feel free to type that back in again in case I missed it. I'll see it the second time around, hopefully. I'm just going to quickly scroll through and see if there's anything in particular that I missed. NT2, probably the next best shotgun mic below the price range of the 416. I mean, when I got my at the time that I got my 416, it was the first real microphone that I was buying for my studio. I keep hitting that boom arm, and I apologize. First real microphone that I bought, and I actually called Uncle Roy and I said, "Look, I'm about to get my first real microphone. I'd been using a really crappy, cheap microphone for years." And I said, I want something that is going to be great in my studio, but something that I can also travel with. Because at that point in time, I was probably between conferences, family vacations, visiting my wife's family who lives about 8 hours away. I probably spent about 3 months of the year on the road. 16, 17, 18, 19, like I was traveling constantly. And so I wanted a microphone that was going to be able to do both and be able to do it well. And so that's when Uncle Roy said, go get the 416. And so Uncle Roy says, go get the 416. Then I'm going to go get the 416 because he's smarter than I am when it comes to this stuff. And so I listen to what he has to say when it comes to this stuff. So I've been thrilled with that microphone since I got it, though. It has paid for itself so many times over, just in my ability to record from the road and deliver auditions and deliver finished voiceover products that my clients can't really tell the difference. And so that's the most important thing to me. Steven says, speaking of LinkedIn, if I find a production house owner, should I hit connect or contact the company and see if they are accepting submissions and okay to send my demo? Absolutely send a connection request. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think at the end of the day, LinkedIn is a network of professionals looking to connect with other professionals for professional purposes. So I don't think that it is out of the question at all to send a connection request. What you have to be careful of on LinkedIn, and this is something that I see a lot on the platform, people talk about this often. Nobody wants to be cold sold on LinkedIn. And so what you should not be doing is, you find Jenny, and Jenny's a producer, and Jenny is, producing explainer videos, and you have an explainer video demo. So you send a connection request to Jenny and say, hey, Jenny, I know that you produce explainer videos. I'm a voice actor who voices explainer videos. I'd love to send you my demo. Don't do that. Don't do that. Connect with Jenny. Warm up that conversation a little bit. Try to get Jenny to talk about her services. Look for her to, warm up a little bit. And then when you've got a chance to get her talking a little bit, you can mention, oh, hey, by the way, I just wanted to let you know that I do voiceovers for explainers. And if there's an opportunity for us to collaborate, let me know. Would you mind if I, flipped you a link to my demo or something like that? So don't just come right out of the gate trying to sell. Naomi says, do you have any tricks or strategies for all the emails that bounce back when you have not been deemed a safe sender? How do I get past these firewalls? It can be really hard. One of the things that I would encourage you to do if you've never done before, Brad Newman from Upper Level Hosting created a really great tool. It's the mail check tool, and the website is just mailchecktool.com, mailchecktool.com. It gives you the ability to put in your email address and see if there are any kind of red flags at all, because there may be some behind the scenes technical settings and stuff like that that could actually be keeping your message from landing. Excuse me. So mailchecktool.com, I would check that. I think that being cautious of what you are putting in the subject lines, that could be something else. You know, we talked a little bit about that. There are certain types, there are certain subject lines that may or may not cause things to flag. I'm going to put a link in the chat to a podcast that I did with Brad Newman. You may want to listen to that podcast as well, How to Keep Your Emails Out of Spam. That one might provide a little bit of insight for you and maybe answer some of your questions as well. Okay, John says, Mark, commissioned to read for an e-learning site. I pitched myself to do this job. Former VO who told her no session fee and $60 per hour. 150 stories so far. What are your thoughts? I would need to know a little bit more about it. $50 per hour is really low for e-learning. If it's actual e-learning, like generally speaking, I think a fair e-learning rate, and the rate that I generally try to get for e-learning is 25 cents per word, and 25 cents per word works out to about $2,500 per finished hour of e-learning. Now, per finished hour, it may depend on how quickly you read and how quickly you edit. So it might be that it's 3 hours for you to complete one finished hour, or it might be 4 hours for you to complete one finished hour. But I think like $40 per finished minute is probably more of a standard rate for e-learning. And there's obviously some variance in there, you know, maybe down to $30 based on bulk opportunities, and maybe as high as $50 or $60 if it's really complex material with, you know, like medical narration and stuff like that. The GVAA rate guide can be a really great resource for that as well. But I mean, it depends. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on what the usage is. It's hard to say. There's a lot of unknown variables in there that I may not have an answer that makes it hard for me to give you an accurate answer at this point. Richie says, "Will the link to this be available?" What are you specifically referring to, Richie? Are you saying the link to this live stream? There you go. Uncle Roy says, "Go get the 416." So, go get the 416. John says, "Oh snap, my first YouTube live." You made it, John. Great to have you here. All right, let's see what else is going on. Sorry guys, just quickly looking through the chat, looking for some questions to pop up. What is your best sound treatment choice for small spaces? Foam, sound panels, or sound blankets? If not all of them, maybe an Uncle Roy question. Uncle Roy could certainly give you some insight into that, because I do think that it varies from space to space. I can tell you, for me specifically, I treated my space with acoustic panels. They were Prime Acoustic is the brand. I have Prime Acoustic London 8 kit is the panels that I have for the wall, and then a Cloud Nimbus are the panels that I have on the ceiling. So that's what I treated my studio space with. But my studio space was also a custom built space, and it was insulated very well, and all of that sort of stuff. So I really do think that it depends on the space itself and what variables you are working with. You know, some people, every time I push a button, it changes out my scene, and I don't know why I do that. I don't know what button I'm hitting. Anyway, I do think that it does vary from space to space. I think it can make a difference the microphone that you're using. That's why you see some guys that have like Auralex floor to ceiling. Like every square inch of their wall is covered in Auralex. But then if you look in my booth, I've just got a couple of panels in front of me, a panel behind me, a couple of cloud panels above me. The floor is carpeted, and that's it. And it's good enough for my space and the way that my space is treated. I know that's kind of a general question. But I would definitely say that that is probably an Uncle Roy question, maybe a free studio assessment with Uncle Roy to get him to listen to your space and give you some insights into what you may or may not need in order to get the best sound possible. To answer your question, Richie, yes, the live stream, all of the live streams are live on YouTube as soon as we're done. As soon as I end this broadcast, I will go back through and add chapter markers so that it's really easy for people to go straight to questions that have been asked. But yes, any of these Free Advice Friday live streams, they're always available, so you can go back and review them a little bit later. All right, John, I'm going to take your question because you made it to the live stream. I was just about to wrap up, but I'll answer your question because you made it. How quick on a LinkedIn connection do you pitch? Do they know based on your profile why you connected? How soon is too soon? This is something in my LinkedIn masterclass that I taught the other night. I talked specifically to this issue. It could take 5 minutes or it could take 5 months. I think you just have to see how the conversation evolves. So when I reach out to, I'm just going to use an instructional designer, for example, because I do send out a lot of connection requests to instructional designers on LinkedIn. So I reach out to the instructional designer, a comment on something from their profile. Hopefully they accept my connection request. When they accept my connection request, perfect example of this. I connected with one this week and she happened to be from Memphis. And I happen to know that Memphis has great barbecue. And so when I started the conversation with her, I mentioned that. I'm like, I love barbecue. I'm a barbecue guy. And one of these days I dream about going to Memphis and getting barbecue. Well, of course, anybody from Memphis, we're talking barbecue now, right? And so then the conversation evolves to, talking a little bit about barbecue. And I'm like, where do the locals go, right? I don't want to go where the tourists go. Tell me where the locals go. And she gives me some places where locals go for barbecue. And so we're warming up that conversation to where I then can go, hey, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Tell me a little bit about the work you're doing at whatever the company is, right? Now she can tell me a little bit about the work she's doing at the company. And then I can write back and say, hey, based on what you're telling me, if you're ever looking for a voice for these courses you're creating or there's videos that you're working on, always happy to send a custom audition or quote anytime you want. Let me know if there's an opportunity to collaborate, right? And so that's kind of how the conversation evolves. The reason why it could take 5 minutes or 5 months is because it depends entirely on how often they're on LinkedIn. Some people are on LinkedIn every day. Some people are on LinkedIn once a week. Some people are on LinkedIn once a month. And so that's why the conversation may take a little bit longer to unfold. But I do think there comes a point where you get to the point, but I like to try to steer the conversation there by, if I can get them to tell me a little bit more about their work, as they're telling me a little bit more about their work, then I can start to figure out whether or not there's an opportunity for us to collaborate, and I can explain how what I do could potentially add value to what they do. Hopefully that answers your question, John. All right, guys, I got to run because I've got someplace that I have got to be for 3 o'clock. So I need to get this wrapped up and I want to get the chapters put into the videos. But thank you as always for hanging out and for all of the great questions that you ask. I certainly do appreciate it. One quick reminder, I am in the process right now of working on Voiceover Marketing Playbook version 3.0, totally overhauling the course. And that is going to be coming out April 11th to the 20th at voiceovermarketingplaybook.com. So stand by for that one. Again, flip me a like if you've enjoyed the live stream. Subscribe to the channel so you'll get notified the next time that I do go live. As it stands right now, I think probably the next Free Advice Friday, possibly on St. Patrick's Day, actually, March the 17th. We'll see how it pans out, but that will probably be the next one because I know now I can't do one next week. So, as always, whatever you decide to do this weekend, have fun, stay safe, and go find some leads.